Hello and welcome to the Killing Time with Arch podcast, the show that talks to your favorite TikTok creators and helps you find your new favorite ones too. My guest today is Laura, although she's better known on TikTok as the BP Spouse, short for Bipolar Spouse. As someone who has bipolar 1 disorder, like her husband does, I have to say she's given me huge insights into what my partners have gone through while I've suffered from mania and depression, because it does affect the whole family. I have a lot of questions for her, and I think we've already agreed to do a second one so that we can talk more about it as well. So I'm excited to be talking with her today and hopefully learning a thing or two. And I have enjoyed watching her on TikTok for a while now because she makes learning about bipolar entertaining. And also because her account is full of so many great tips and overall just very educational. So join me for my conversation with her in just a moment. Hello, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for talking with me today.
Hey, Arch, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Well, to maybe jump right into things, I wonder if maybe you could tell a little bit about your story and your husband's and family's story and just kind of, why you decided to start the TikTok account that you did.
Yeah, thank you. So, my name's Laura, as he mentioned, and in 2020, I kind of got on the TikTok bandwagon and decided to try out TikTok and see what it was about. And I absolutely loved it because of there were people telling their stories, not only from the first person perspective, but from, a third person perspective as loving someone with all different kinds of mental illnesses. So the first account I had ever run into was a DID account, dissociative identity disorder, and they had an account and then their spouse had an account, and I was like, wow, like this is so helpful because
Right.
I didn't really know much about DID, but I found their content just so interesting, and I loved how they were breaking the stigma by talking about it. Like it really felt like they were just bringing it out into the open and breaking the stigma, and I loved it. So that gave me my idea to start the BP Spouse. And so yes, I have a husband of 18 years who suffers from bipolar 1 disorder with psychotic features. And he's had 8 or 9 episodes through the course of our relationship. And that was kind of my intention, was I really feel like when we don't talk about things, like stigma is born in the dark, and shame. And if we could
Mm-hmm.
just come out in the open, doesn't need to be anything shameful about it. And I definitely had my husband's support. I showed him the account that kind of inspired me, and he was like, absolutely, I think it's great. I encourage you to make this content. And he even, wants me to like write a book on it, which maybe eventually, as you and I alluded to or talked about before, Arch. But yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I appreciate so much that you do that. I try to do that in my own life as well. I have, a lot of students who've come up to me and said like, thanks for sharing the fact that you have bipolar and suffer from mental health issues because, if somebody breaks their leg, it's not like we blame them for it, but people with mental health, a lot of times that does happen, I think. And so I wonder too, like one frequent complaint I see on your account that I hate a lot is that a lot of people are like, well, how could you ever talk about that? That given that, that's something that your husband suffers from. And I wonder, what do you say to those people either in real life or online when they ask, like, why are you talking about this kind of thing?
Yeah, I do get that comment a lot. And, my comments vary what I might say back to them. Sometimes I say, my husband doesn't feel ashamed. So, I hope you don't feel ashamed either. Because I think a lot of it is because of shame. They're like, oh my God, don't tell a story like that. That's so embarrassing.
Right.
But no, if you met my husband in real life, before I even started this TikTok, he has his own TikTok. He's just not very active on it. But his tagline is bipolar and not afraid to talk about it. And that is who he is
Yeah.
completely in real life. So, people he's met, people he's talked to, when he says like, oh, he'll even say it this way. He'll be like, I'm severely bipolar. Like he will catch people off guard. And
Right.
then they will be so open and they'll be like, oh my God, I love your husband. He's so authentic. He's so genuine. And it's just because he's not ashamed about having bipolar disorder, nor should he be. So I say that, or I just did a video with him the other day that was like, we both did it together, where I was like, you guys, like it was some cute sound where, it was me, and then I pan to him, and I'm like, he's part of this. He watches all my videos. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that. You know, one of the things I wonder about, because I was married for a while and I got divorced last year and I'm engaged now, and so I've spent the entirety of my bipolar life almost being in a partnership with someone, and so I'm wondering, like, can you talk a little bit about what that's like from the partner or spouse's side, and whenever he experiences mania or depression, or when the mood is stable, like what does your life look like?
Yeah. Well, for one, congratulations.
Thank you.
I
Very
actually
happy.
followed your whole journey through that on TikTok. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So, I mean, I would say that, a lot of people, which I think is funny, will also accuse me of having my account for clout, which
Right.
I'm not quite sure what clout I'm gaining, from doing these videos, but what I'm hoping to gain is to just be breaking the stigma, like I said. So by talking about, I also get accused of being selfish. People will say, well, gee, if it's hard for you, can you imagine what it's like for him? And
Right.
I can. I do know how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as a spouse, I mean, what basically happens, I think the hardest thing for us that we deal with, we did deal with depression, but primarily Cody has mania. And what's hardest about mania is, for me, is that he might be with me physically, but mentally, emotionally, the partner that I have, it is not there. Like, that is not the person I married. And so it really feels like another person is inhabiting my house that absolutely hates me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really how it is. And like, yes, do I know his side? Of course I do. I mean, he's just trying to survive in his own world. Like, it's not to punish me, but yeah. So I think that I kind of tell that side of the story because it's really isolating for spouses. And I think my account has really helped partners and spouses to at least like talk to each other and be like, I get this comment a lot too. Wow, I'm not the only one. Oh wow, I
Right.
thought I was the only one that dealt with this. And so, yeah, I mean, and then in terms of depression, Cody's really only had one major depressive episode, but it was caused by Abilify, which was just not a good drug for him. And
Mm-hmm.
it turned him into like a cardboard cutout. And so it was again like he was physically there in a different way, right? Like he was physically there, but he just was not there at all, emotionally or mentally at all. So that's pretty much how it feels, I would say, if I summed it up.
Well, and I know what that's like specifically with Abilify, and I think maybe I heard you talking about that and realized maybe I needed to go and check my meds and realized like it had been, I mean, I was in depression in one stage or another for like a whole year, and it was pretty
Oh,
awful. So like, and I'm
yeah.
on lithium and Wellbutrin now, which has been a good mix for me at least. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how difficult it is finding a good psychiatrist and finding the right medications and all that process.
I always think that I'm not a person who has, mental health issues. I mean, anxiety aside, but not like a severe mental health issue like Cody. And it's frustrating for me to help
Mm-hmm.
him find psychiatrists, help him find care, help him get appointments, get him on insurance. Like his hospitalizations were burying us because they are so, even on regular, insurance, which we had, you're talking thousands of dollars for a hospital stay if he needed one. So then even just getting him on Medicaid, it took forever, but we got him on Medicaid. But yeah, there was this one time he got out of the hospital. The social workers are supposed to help you set up outpatient care. And
Right.
they talk the talk and give you papers, but he's never been set up ever out of all nine with an outpatient actual provider that they found for him. And so there was this one time I took a whole morning. It was like from 8 to 11, and I called like 25 to 30 providers, and more than half of them, their answering machine was like, "Hello, you've reached Dr. So and so. We are not taking new patients at the moment. If
Right.
this is blah blah blah," and then they go back to being that. I'm like, okay, they're not taking new patients. They're not taking new patients. Like it's a nightmare to find care. It is ridiculous in
Right.
my experience. What's your experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's been difficult for sure, and I wasn't sure if you meant 9 episodes just period or 9 episodes where he had to be hospitalized or not. I've been hospitalized twice though, and it was a terrifying experience the first time, slightly better the second time, but yeah, it was not. I mean, I think that's what people like. I'm not afraid of going anymore because I know like I'll get out eventually. I'm
Yeah.
there to like, but that's a real fear the first time you're there is like you don't know if you're gonna ever get out, and so it's I definitely have PTSD from the experience the first time that makes the treatment more difficult maybe the next time, and so yeah, I was curious though. Has he had to be hospitalized each of those times then? Gotcha. What is that experience like, on the other side?
So it is he used to be a musician. I wish he still did it. When I met him, he was in 3 bands and he can play so many instruments, but he got out of it. But I always joked that like his first hospitalization was on the 5th floor of a hospital we have here in Denver. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, your album should be the 5th floor and write a whole freaking song because it is a whole other world.
Right.
For me as well. So, I mean, what my experience was is it's scary for me too because when you, like as opposed to he just got diagnosed with diabetes, by the way.
Oh, okay.
That was way easy. As horrible as that is, I strolled into the hospital. I strolled into the elevator. I went straight up to the room that he's on. I strolled into his room without one person asking me what I was doing and what I was holding. As
Right.
opposed to a psychiatric hospitalization, I am greeted by security guards. I have to go through a metal detector. I have
Mm-hmm.
to give up my phone, my keys, and anything in my pockets that they put in a locker. I have to then go through another metal detector to make sure that I have nothing on me. And then we cannot go in until a security guard opens the locked door to then let us into the unit, which is probably let down a long corridor, usually followed by another locked door where you actually can get in on the unit.
Right.
So, I mean, these people, it is like these people, like you guys, like really feel like you're locked up. Like I can't even imagine. Like no wonder you were scared. Like, am I ever gonna get out of here? Like you genuinely are locked up.
Yeah. Well, and it's so confusing too, especially the first time I didn't know that I was bipolar. I just thought I
Yep.
had some
Yep.
psychotic break, and it was very. I think it was scary, and I actually I won't say who, but I am actually now kind of on the other side in your position in terms of a family member of mine who is going through largely similar things. Oh, I think we lost you for a second there. Oh, there we go. I lost you for a second, but you're back now. so, but yeah, I went through or am going through a situation with a family member, and I'm realizing like just how difficult it is to get them to, believe you and that there is a problem. And at one point, I just said to them, like I know what you're going through right now, but like you're not if it is what we think it is, like you're not going to believe us, so you really like, you just have to
Yeah.
trust that we have your best interest at heart. And that was really the only thing that convinced them that all right, maybe we need to see a psychiatrist or something. But how do you get like does is it the same thing every time, or does Cody generally know what's going on, that like he's going through it, and he like how is his mood like during the process, I guess, and what do you have to do?
Yeah. So
So sorry.
what's going on? And so actually, I recently learned of a term I never heard before called anosognosia. And anosognosia is the term to describe someone who has a severe mental illness like bipolar or schizoaffective, where it's like another mental illness on top of their current one, where they do not recognize that they're not well.
Right.
Um, so that is definitely what he experiences. As he's gone through so many, unfortunately or fortunately, it's been easier to convince him he needs help. So he will like now recognize like, okay, like they're telling me these things, I still don't think I'm okay, but I so he has like this his last episode last January, he did check himself into the hospital, but they released him too early, and a month later he's back in again.
Wow.
So that was the first time that's ever happened. Usually once he's released, he's good for like a long period of time, but
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's getting. I guess convincing him is getting better as we've gone along here. But there's been some pretty horrific. Usually ends up with cops. He'll joke now. He's a very funny person. He'll joke like, "Hey, I didn't catch a charge this time going into the hospital."
Right. Well, and that's
uh,
a very real concern, you know. And I remember offering to do jujitsu with the police, with the hospital police the last time I was there. I was just offering from my perspective. They took it as somewhat something more. But
right.
yeah,
I'll take it as something more for sure.
yeah, I just thought we were gonna roll and have fun, but you know they did not, and so I got a 72-hour hold out of that. But
So,
you alluded to like the last episode being particularly bad. I wonder if you could share maybe kind of what that last one has been like, and what all you had to do to help get him back, you know, restored to kind of being a part of the family and everything again, or as much as you'd like to share.
yeah, sure. Yeah, this last one last year was probably, in terms of the damage it did to our family, the worst it's ever been. And really, it's so sad because last January he did recognize he needed to go to the hospital, and oh my gosh, like even leading up to the hospital, I mean, he was definitely manic spending, but
Right.
he figured out if he manic spends on me or the kids, I don't get as mad.
Mm-hmm.
But so he bought all of these presents on Amazon that would come to the house while he was in the hospital because he felt really bad and guilty about having to go. And then he did go. He checked himself in. They kept him for a week. And then he got back out. And he always gets released a little manic. Like, as long as he's not psychotic and it feels like he's stable, they'll usually release him after, 5 days or, 2 weeks or something. But
Mm-hmm.
um, he kind of got hyper fixated on getting a new truck, which was something he even went in getting. And when he came out, I was not in agreement of getting a truck right now. And so
Mm-hmm.
we always say there's a bad guy in every episode. So I became
Mm-hmm.
a guy, and it was fueled by his parents who offered, like, they were completely enabling him, like, oh, we'll buy you a truck, or you should just divorce her. Like, it was really bad.
Mm.
I feel like a lot of them they contributed to it a lot. And I mean, he realizes that now too, but yeah, like basically he wasn't getting better because he was fixated on this getting a brand new truck thing,
Right.
and was like jetting off to Utah and like you know and so I really had no choice. Like at one point I had to get like a restraining order because he was just verbally harassing me to the point where like I couldn't even sleep, like because he wanted this truck, like, and I
Mm-hmm.
had to be the one to help sign or like to release his other truck to sell it. And so I had to get a restraining order, and then he broke it, and then he caught a charge, as one would say. And I almost thought I had to get divorced because he just was not coming out of it. So he had been hospitalized in January, hospitalized again in February, and still was not coming out of it. He finally came out of it in March.
Wow.
So once he came out, then he was like horrified at what was going on. And we did not end up getting a divorce. And we ended up trying to get more safeguards in place, like an action plan, going to a marriage counselor to like help us draft an action plan for next time this would happen. Both of us agreeing on a set of characteristics that if he looks at it, even though he doesn't realize he's sick, but I'm saying you're checking all of these boxes, like a plan for him to help maybe reduce the mania before it gets that far. So, I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully have better safeguards in place if there, God forbid, is the next time.
Right, and you said something that I thought was interesting because I thought maybe that was unique to me, and then I'm learning with this family member and hearing from you that maybe I don't know, it's just a thing that bipolar people do, but there is always some bad guy, right? And in this is situation, like the first time I went manic, I was very worried. Like I thought that the FBI and CIA and the Chinese government were out to get me. And then the family member I was talking to said the exact same thing, just a different reason
Yeah.
why. And so, like, it's always interesting. But then you do just kind of start to see everybody through a lens. Either this is a good guy, or this is a bad
Yeah.
guy. And I don't know why I do that or why other people do that who suffer from bipolar. Maybe you can help understand that a little bit. What tends to make you out to be the bad guy if there is a pattern?
So I have a theory. I don't really know, but my theory is that if you don't believe you are sick, the reality that you are experiencing is your reality. Like that
Mm-hmm.
is real to you.
Right.
Cody's had that too, where the FBI has been after him, but he thought they were like in one episode, he thought they were trying to kill both of us.
Mm.
And regardless, that was his reality.
Right.
And so if you're operating under that assumption that that's the current reality he's living in, someone is out to get him because he's not recognizing that that reality is not real. So if the
Right.
reality is real, you have to have a bad guy who's causing all of these problems in your life. Like, because you're not the cause, because you're not sick. It's not
Right.
you, like in his head, right? Like, so that's my theory is that because you don't realize that you're not well and you are living that reality, someone has to be causing that like chaos in your life that isn't you. So that's
Right.
why you externalize it to some outward bad guy. Why
Well,
you
that
guys
makes total sense. Yeah. Because, yeah, it is your reality. You don't, you can't really. That's the problem is like, once you become I guess that's for me the stage at which I realize, like, well, before that happens, I start taking some, an antipsychotic that I take. But if you slip up into that delusional paranoia and, delusions of grandeur and all those kinds of things, then it becomes much harder, I think, to get help because you can't trust anybody at that point. So
yeah, that's
I'm
don't trust anybody. So
right.
everyone would be a bad guy. Like it's so hard. It's so heartbreaking. So on the separate end, like for me, I remember this one time, it was recent, like when he thought the FBI was after us. That was the time he thought they were going to kill us. And then he happened to go to work and then there was an accident and like real reality gets tied up in his delusional reality. So there's like bits of it
Oh
that
yeah.
were not just all made up. He's not living in La La Land. He's still in the real world, incorporating pieces that he's interpreting wrong. So there was an accident that caused like a blockage. And then he was convinced the blockage was because the FBI was successfully trapping him.
Of
So
course.
then he's calling me, and I'm like racing to get him. And I mean, he's in a full blown panic attack, in the middle of a freaking highway. And not a highway, it's like a very fast avenue. And, he's screaming at me, like, get in the car. Like, what took you so long? But he's not screaming at me. If your reality is you really thought someone was killing both of us, how are you going to act? Are you going to be verbally abusive? Of course, like, well, yeah, because if you think I'm going to be dead, get in the freaking car. Like, we don't have time
Right.
to. That's his reality. So yeah, it's really
Well,
heartbreaking on this end. I just remember looking at him sweating, panic attack. He doesn't have panic attacks normally unless he's manic, and I was just like, this is heartbreaking that he thinks this is happening.
oh yeah. Well, and I guess, speaking to that, I asked my fiance for questions, and she had
Yeah,
as many or more than I do. So I hope you'll be willing to come back for a second one because I know that my time is short today. But I hope
yeah,
that you'll be willing to talk with me some more. But one of the ones was related to that because I just even I guess, when I'm not, maybe I'm at like a 6 or 7 on the mania scale out of 10, then I get much more argumentative. I get much more kind of hostile, defensive, all those things that are not really great quality traits in a relationship. And so I wonder, like, how do you deal with, your own self-care? How do you survive kind of these manic episodes, especially one that had you considering divorce and all that kind of stuff? Like, what do you do to take care of yourself? And
yeah. I think that's a great part too. I would love to come back, unless you want me to answer it now. Like, if
oh
I
yeah, if you want to talk about that one now, then don't worry, I got tons more for the next time.
Well, I really think that the best advice, for one, it's just understand education for one. If family members and partners support whoever is supporting the individual, if they can just understand that bipolar is almost like a separate entity from the person that your loved one is. So, bipolar is the one that's having an anxiety attack. Bipolar is the one that's acting out. Bipolar is the one that has a short, fuse. If you can
Right.
externalize that and be like, eek, that's the bipolar talking. My Cody would never talk to me like that. I know that to be true. I know that to be 100% true. I'm still a human though. So even
Right.
if he is still, at like saying stuff to me or like you said, not great quality traits in a relationship, that's where I really think that the self-care is actually boundaries. So like the boundary is if you continue this behavior, I can't be around you. Or if you continue saying this, I have to do this. And that's why it escalated this last episode. It was if you continue to harass me about the truck and I can't even sleep because you're sending 40 to 50 text messages in the middle of the night, I have to get a restraining order on you because I can't function. And he kept doing it, and so I had to follow through. Like, that was the boundary, which is horrible, but it's what I had to do.
Right.
So yeah, that was an extreme. A lot of times it's just, I'm hanging up on you if you keep screaming at me, and you hang up. Like, so it can be simple. It doesn't have to be severe, but yeah.
No, that makes total sense. Well, before I let you go and then, bring you back on another day, because I have way too many questions to get through, maybe 2 more episodes. I don't know. But where all can people find you? I know on TikTok, anywhere else that you can be found. And you have, you mentioned working on a book too, right?
Yeah, I'm working on a book. That's still in the process. But yeah, TikTok is my favorite place to be. So the BP Spouse, you can find me at TikTok. I did make a Facebook page, but I'm not active as there as much. So yeah, I would say the TikTok is the place. I'm also on Instagram under it too, but again, I'm not as active. So place to find me TikTok for sure.
Okay, great. And is the book is going to be kind of how to be, because mine the one I'm working on is kind of a guide to being bipolar as a bipolar person, sufferer. So I'm curious, like what is that you're working on?
So I'm working on it with another woman named Brooke from Brooke and Jeremy. And Jeremy also has BP1. And we're both we want it to be like a workbook for spouses. So when this is happening, what can I do? And just, we want it to be educational. Like, what are you dealing with? What are you seeing? And then, how do you employ boundaries? What is an action plan? What is a crisis plan? Because in her situation, he leans more toward the depressive, unaliving, situation. Mm-hmm. I feel like we both have kind of unique perspectives on the same disorder. And so we want it to be, like mostly helpful for families. So like a workbook for them. Yeah.
No, that's really cool. And that's a great point too. Cause I mean, that's one of the things, everybody gets nervous, I feel like, when you're manic and everything, but like, that's the least time you're like likely to harm yourself or others. It seems it's more when you're depressed. It's, in my experience at least. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
He's less inclined to hurt himself. If he did, though, it's because of his impulsiveness and risky behaviors. Mm-hmm. So in the middle of a road, for example,
right?
Panic attack. Like, I mean, he's not trying to unalive himself, right. But that is a very risky situation to put yourself in.
That's a great point. I should specify intentionally. Well, I wish we had more time, but definitely we'll have you back on. And I really enjoy talking with you. And it's really, I love your account so much. And it's been very helpful for me and for my fiance. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Arch. This is fun.
Absolutely. And tell Cody I said hello too.
I will.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. If I can figure out how my music works one more time, we will play the outro music. There we go. That was my interview with the BP spouse, Laura. And if you are not following her already, you should be, whether you are a loved one who has bipolar or not, or whose partner has bipolar or not. But her account is definitely essential watching. And you can also find me on TikTok as well at Gem City Judas Priest. And you can visit my website of the same name. Just add .com to the end of it. There you will find a link to a forum where you can actually sign up to hear about my upcoming book whenever I have the release date information for all of that. So the working title is One Dude's Guide to Being Bipolar, How to Stay the Hell Out of Grippy Socks Jail, Achieve Anyways, and Abide Always. It's in the editing stages now, so I hope you'll check that out. And don't forget to subscribe. Be sure to listen to more episodes, and thanks for sharing your time with me. That's it for this week. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you on down the trail.